Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. I'm joined by Sid Lowe for the final TSFP of the season. The season is over, Sydney. Try and contain that huge grin from spreading across your face. We're done. We're done.
Yeah, but we're not, though, are we? Because Luis de la Fuente names his Spain squad in, about 3 hours? Yes. We're off to the USA. We still got to wrap up the most important game in the history of Rayo Vallecano, possibly the most important game we've had all season. Still the Conference League final. And so, yeah, still going.
Still relentlessly going. People trying to put the sphere into the rectangle all over the place. And we will be here to talk about it. The temperatures have soared in Madrid over the last week or so. It's absolutely roasting now. We're into summer. And the sound of the Madrid summer is construction work. There is some
absolutely is. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, there is some going around my house somewhere. I can hear there's some drilling. Hopefully, you guys can't hear too much, but if you can, apologies for that. There is literally nothing we can do about that apart from not live in Madrid. So lots for us to talk about. This is the final free podcast that we are putting out of the season, the final Monday podcast of the season. Remember, we are podcasting all over the summer. Patreon.com/TSFP. We're taking a break on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want the full TSFP coverage of the World Cup, you have to join us at patreon.com/TSFP. Patrons get at least one podcast a week over the summer, probably more, to be honest, but at least one. You can sign up from €4.75 a month. It's cheaper if you get annual membership. Come and join us. We're going to be doing loads of stuff around the World Cup. There's also lots going on at Real Madrid, I think, this summer as well. It's going to be busy, the transfer window, etc. So come and join us. This is what happened on the final match day of fixtures, match day 38. Alaves 1, Rayo Vallecano 2. Rayo coming from behind to win at Mendizorroza. Betis playing a full-strength side. They had nothing to play for, but they put out a good team and beat Levante 2-1. Celta Vigo beating Sevilla by 1-0. It was only Celta's 6th win at home of the season. Espanyol and Real Sociedad playing out a 1-1 draw. Getafe beating Osasuna 1-0. Mallorca beating Oviedo 3-0. Real Madrid beating Athletic Club 4-2. Valencia beating Barca 3-1. Champions Barca, very much on the beach. Girona 1, Elche 1 was the game that Sydney was at, and an extraordinary result in the final game of the season. Villarreal beating Atleti 5-1 in what was effectively a playoff for third place. Villarreal finishing third. So what was really to be decided was who was going to get into Europe and who was going to get 7th. Get into the Conference League and who was going to get relegated. Getafe got 7th and got into the Conference League after beating Osasuna. And who went down? Well, Mallorca went down and Girona went down to join Real Oviedo. You were at the playoff game, Sid, to basically stay up. Girona against Elche. And the winner stayed up. Basically, whoever won this game would stay up. Girona needed to win. Elche needed a point. Elche got the point and Girona didn't. Mallorca going down as well, despite that 3-0 win over Oviedo. We had how many teams finish on 3 points, on 42 points, Sid? Was it three teams?
Three of them in the end, yeah.
Yeah, and Mallorca it was who went down, Osasuna and Levante being saved also on 42 points. So tell us, Sydney, about being at Montilivi, about that playoff game between Girona and Elche, winner takes all. What was it like being there, and your feelings on Girona going down?
Yeah, well, Girona did what actually Osasuna did as well, which was to get themselves in a position where they could go down because they'd got themselves in a position where they couldn't go down. And that's essentially why it went wrong. So if you go back to week 31, I think it is, Girona beat Villarreal 1-0. And they don't win another game for the rest of the season. At that point, they think, right, we're basically safe. At that point, I think they're on, what are they on? They're on 38, I think, and thinking, well, there's 38 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games left of the season. That's it. We're done. In fact, let's start thinking about maybe Europe. But they'd also lost Van Aert, their top scorer at this point. And they just failed to find a way through those final games. And they didn't score sufficient goals. You look at it, you go through the final games. It's 1-1 with Elche on the final day, so they only score 1. They don't score at Atletico Madrid. They only score 1 against Real Sociedad. They only score 1 against Rayo Vallecano. They don't score against Mallorca. They only score 1 against Valencia. And that's where it goes wrong. And, you know, talking to you and Al, because you both commentated the game against Atletico last week, for example, they're not a terrible team at all. They play quite nice football and they've got some pretty good players, but they just couldn't find a way to score goals. And it felt, I'll be honest with you, on Saturday, as if it was set up for Stuani to rescue them again. And Stuani came on and they just couldn't get him the ball. They could not get him the ball. They had one chance on the ball, a Lamar chance. It's really, really nicely worked. And he smacks it against the bar with 10 minutes to go. And that shot at that point changes everything. Because as you say, the nature of the table is that 3 teams have finished on 42 points. One of them goes down, 2 of them survive. The team just below him is Girona, who have 41. They only go down by a solitary point. Even above those on 42, there are 3 teams on 43 points, all the way up to 13th. And it's been that tight all the way through. And then you have that other idiosyncrasy of the Spanish league, which is that at the end of the season, if teams are level, it's not done on goal difference. It's done on head-to-head record. And if there's more than one team involved in a tie, as there were on this occasion with 4 teams, it becomes a mini league. So in other words, you've got Levante, Osasuna, Mallorca, all on 42 points. What do? They create a mini league of the results between those teams. That led to a situation in the final day where this is going to sound very undramatic, but trust me, in the stadium, it felt incredibly dramatic, where Mallorca and Girona were going down all the way through the final day. At no point did the bottom 3 change. At no point. But there were moments in that game where not only could the bottom 3 have changed, but it could have changed enormously. There was a round about a 20-minute period where a goal from Girona, 1-0 down to Elche, they equalised early in the second half. There's the whole of the second half to go. A goal from Girona would have not just taken them out of the relegation zone, it would have taken Mallorca out of the relegation zone as well. 1 goal saves 2 teams. Then what happens is that Levante start to lose away at Betis, which is actually bad news. This is the bizarre thing about this whole structure. It's bad news for the other teams that Levante are losing, because what they want is Levante safe and out of there, and so that they're not in this mini league. Levante are losing, so then you're in a situation where it's 1 goal basically to save Girona. Elche know that a win or a draw keeps them up. Girona know that a defeat puts them down. A draw puts them down. They have to win. There is a moment, and it only lasts for about sort of a minute and a half or so, where Elche know they are safe because the full-time whistle has gone in the other games. And their staff are on the bench shouting, "It's done, it's done, it's done." And you feel, this was the thing that really, really struck me. You feel it go around the stadium of everyone else in the stadium realizing it's done, they're safe. And they are safe even if they lose. So you've got basically a minute and a half, 2 minutes in which people in the stadium are thinking, might they just kind of down tools at this point? Now, of course, you can't risk that as a team. And you know, I know that Elche staff and their players were kind of looking at Girona, and you've got them right in front of you, and it's hard not to put yourself in their position. But you also, first of all, you can't trust that it's absolutely true that the other games have finished.
No, yeah.
And so in the end, Girona go down because really and truly, apart from the shot against the bar, they didn't create enough. It was, the tension was extraordinary. There'd been great atmosphere pre-game, building it up. During the game, do you know what? During the game, there were moments when there was no atmosphere at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't mean that as a criticism. This is going to sound such a stupid thing to say.
Go on.
The silence was loud, if you see what I mean. In that there was this kind of tension and a silence, and the silence was the sound of tension. You know, the sound of people who are not just the players, who kind of almost couldn't bring themselves to do anything, but just sitting there, they're thinking, "Oh, what's going to happen?" And then in the end, it didn't happen for them, and Elche survived.
The silence was loud. It is a surprise, I would say, that Girona and Mallorca have both gone down as well. Both of these teams, certainly at the start of the season. Remember, you know, Girona were playing in the Champions League last season. Mallorca, this is not a squad. It's not a team that was expected to be battling relegation. Or they had hoped to be, you know, moving away from that kind of relegation and aspiring to more. How surprising is it that these two sides have gone down?
Well, I mean, obviously, look, the first thing you have to do is put it in the context of what we were talking about with the numbers. So 19th on 41 points. Now, 40 points usually is the threshold, and you think you're safe. So, yeah.
You think you're safe.
You think you're safe. But, you know, we've not had a team need as many points to survive for over a decade. 42. For 42 to be the threshold, we've not seen that for over a decade. That was when Depor went down with 43 points. Last year...
Leganés went down with 40 last year.
With 40, yeah. So 40 this year, you know, you're well down, if you see what I mean. But the thing I'm trying to say is that the gap between Girona and 19th on 41 points is only 5 to the team in 10th.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, how do we analyze this? It's quite difficult in a way because, of course, what you're asking teams to do is to reach their targets. What you can't control is what's happening around them. And some of those targets have felt a little bit false because, of course, you've had certain teams whose season is kind of done. So slightly strange results have happened. Osasuna are a fascinating example of this. So Osasuna didn't win a single one of their last 5 games. And they lost them all. They lost 5 in a row. You go back to the game where they beat Sevilla 2-1. That's week 33, isn't it? They beat Sevilla 2-1, and they think they're safe. And they don't only think they're safe. I mean, they actually genuinely, at that point, they thought they were mathematically safe because they looked at the numbers. Oh, this is basically safe. It would take a miracle for us to go down now. Now, actually, here's the thing with the argument that we're about to put in place here. They were right. They were able to lose the final 5 games and still survive, but they were this close in the end to not doing so. And that is because, of course, they then start thinking, what about Europe? And there was a kind of a decompression and a kind of a moment. And I think that's happened to a lot of teams this year. And it's created a lot of really strange results. The footage for me that sort of summed this up really nicely is that you have this pitch invasion at Getafe where Osasuna lose. And Osasuna's players are in the middle of the Getafe pitch invasion, still looking at phones and listening to radios. It's surrounded by celebrating Osasuna players. Celebrating Getafe fans. And the Osasuna players are in the middle of it because they're waiting to see if the Girona game has finished yet, which it hasn't. They have about 50 seconds, a minute 10, something like that. And they're in the middle of these Getafe fans. And then they start celebrating with the Getafe fans who run on the pitch, which is amazing. So in terms of your question about, is it a surprise? So yes, it's a surprise. I mean, I think in the case of Girona, even more so. Bear in mind that Girona had a really terrible start. I think I'm right in saying they didn't win any of the first 5 games, but it felt like they'd sorted
it. Didn't win any of the first 8 or 9, I think. Yeah.
Hang on, week 8, they win their first game in week 8, against Girona. So they lost 4 of their first 5. They didn't win any until week 8, and you're thinking, oof, they're in trouble. They then lost a couple more, so they get to week 12 with only 1 win. And then they start winning. And they don't just start winning, they start playing quite well. They have a couple of fairly heavy defeats. So they lose 3-0, I think, to Atletico and 3-0 to Elche, if I remember rightly. But they start winning games and they start playing really quite well. And you start thinking, okay, they're basically all right. And they basically were all right all the way until the very end. And then they didn't win any of those last 7. Now, why did that happen? Now, there is a fundamental basic structural thing here, which is that this isn't the team that won that reached the Champions League. They, after the first season when they almost won the Spanish League, when they competed, at least for the Spanish League, they lost, if you look at the numbers, they lost 5 of the 7 players with the most minutes. They lost their top scorer, their top assist provider, their top passer. They go into last season and they get themselves in a position where they're not as strong anymore, but they've got this Champions League campaign this season. They lose a couple more players in the summer, but they do buy a forward. He starts to score goals. It's sort of okay, but I think there's a mental thing, or at least Michel thinks there's a mental thing. And he's talked a lot this year about the intangibles of having players who think they're in the Champions League. So no, you have to realize where you are. You're not at a Champions League club. And I think that took them a while to overcome, but they did eventually overcome it. And for them to go down in the end, I think it is a paucity of resources up front, given the injuries. Abel Ruiz, who was about the only forward they had, basically didn't ever play. Stuani is 39, couldn't ever play. And as I say, and Vanat was injured. But it's still a huge, huge surprise. Mallorca, they've got a centre forward who scored 43 goals this year. That's 43. That really would be amazing. 23 goals this year.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have happened to them either. That team does have enough good players. I think internally it was a problem. Internally, they had a manager who I think possibly it reached a point where his closeness with the players became a little bit problematic.
Which manager are we talking about?
Arrasate. So they bring in Demichelis, and Demichelis' job in a way really is to impose upon them. And actually, if you look at their final sort of 10 games of the season, the results aren't bad. I think they win 5 of their final 10 games, which is really not too bad. They are another team that thought they were safe. The day that they beat Girona 1-0, you think it's done. There's only 4 games to go. You think it's done. And again, this comes back to the points thing. And I think there is a very significant component of mindsets and runs and slightly strange results which change things, which help to explain why they're down. I think you also have to say then the response of Alaves was very good, but then Alaves also played Barcelona, who just won the league. And bear in mind that Alaves have only survived by 1 point.
Yeah.
Elche, who had a really good start, then wobbled, then recovered again. And Levante's miracle. And it is a miracle.
Talk about Levante's miracle then, Sydney. We spoke a little bit about it last week, so actually maybe we don't need to talk too much. I think about it too.
Yeah, I mean, we would just say that they had only 10 points without Luis Castro, who took over at the beginning of 2026, and they've had 31 points with him, and it's just incredible.
This week's newsletter is going to be out very soon. It is exclusively about who's the manager of the season. Been writing about that. I've been giving my opinion. Sid thinks it's Luis Castro.
No, I agree with you. I
think it's Inigo Perez.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think Luis Castro has done something absolutely extraordinary. And it's Bordalas as well. If you're looking at candidates, I mean, I don't want to preempt your thing because I assume you've talked about all the candidates.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It's Inigo Perez. I think possibly this is such a terrible thing to say. Does he need to take the final step for it to be him? No, good. Okay, I like that.
He got 1 point fewer than Getafe, and they got to a European final.
Yeah.
But anyway, more on that and some other suggestions as well in the newsletter, which is out for patrons today. All right, so that was the relegation battle. Congratulations to the sides that stayed up, and commiserations to fans of Mallorca, Girona, and of course the mighty Real Oviedo. Other things that happened on the final day of the season. Well, I suppose we should reflect on Getafe qualifying for Europe, shouldn't we, Sid? I mean, it's so improbable, so unlikely, so ridiculous. The way that they started the season with barely any professional players on their playing staff and ending it in Europe. The most profound version of harambol you can ever imagine. It's just getting more and more egregious, but at the same time, more and more effective. They are just awful to watch, but just incredibly effective at what they do. It's in a way very impressive. In a way, very, very impressive.
No, it is very impressive. It absolutely is very impressive, and what they've done since the turn of the year is amazing. It reinforces on one level. You've just been asking about the manager of the season, and on one level you could say, well, it's not about Bordalas, is it? Because the players that came in saved them. The impact that was had by. I'm just going to bring up the statistics here. Satriano scores 6 goals. Yeah. Vasquez scores 3, which doesn't sound like many, but it makes a big difference. Romero at the back made a massive difference. That completely changed things. Now it's true that Birmancevic basically didn't play, but those three went straight into the side. Now, under normal circumstances, you might say, well, this means it's not about the manager because they needed to sign, but the manager had spent basically the 3 weeks or 4 or even 5 weeks before the winter window saying we need to sign someone. We need to sign someone. This cannot work. And we talked about this earlier at that point of the season, that this felt like the end. That Bordalas was so annoyed. He was increasingly public about it, increasingly critical, increasingly saying you have to do it. And there's a bit many things. He forced this. And then and it's almost like he was saying, let's not win. Right, we've got them now. Let's go for it. And what they've done is extraordinary. You're right. They are not a great team to watch, but it is enormously impressive. They are not quite as bad a team as it sometimes appears either. I think that probably should be added to this. I think in Luis Milla, they have a player who is shall I make a really
not going to be there next season?
Yeah, I was going to make a really over the top statement then, but you know what? I'm going to make it knowing that it's over the top. But he's not a million miles off being player of the season. What he's done for Getafe is absolutely immense. Him and Adam Barry have been phenomenal. It's really quite something. Their goals scored. They scored. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they scored fewer goals than Real Oviedo.
They have not.
Nobody
has scored fewer goals than Real Oviedo. They scored 32, which is the second fewest.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, so only Real Oviedo are worse than them with goals. Yes. There was a statistic I saw that said it's only the second time that a team's made it into Europe losing more games than they won. Which is quite something for them to be all the way up there having lost more games than they won.
Well done. Eurogeta. They will be travelling all across Europe and marvelling everyone with their style of play next season.
Did you see Alan Neom's Instagram post?
No.
So he put out a post that was oh man, I don't know where it is now. I was looking for it to see if I could show it exactly, but basically it's a series of photographs of when they played against, was it Ajax? I think they played against, and it was like the ultimate expression of Getafe gonna Getafe. Yeah. And there's a moment in that game where Neom is literally just throwing himself on the floor and inventing a foul. Anyway, he's put up an Instagram post of him doing that, and just sort of says, I can't remember I think the words I think are just "we're back" or something like that.
Ganas de volver a veros. Yeah. All right, so there we go. Congratulations to Getafe. That's what was basically set to be sorted on the final day of the season, Europe and the relegation battle. There was an emotional day at the Bernabeu where Real Madrid beat Athletic Club 4-2 in a game of very little significance in terms of the league standings. But it was Dani Carvajal's final game at Real Madrid, and also David Alaba as well, who was leaving. Something of a cult hero. Dani Carvajal, very much a hero, gave an emotive speech afterwards, breaking down in tears. And he is sort of the end of an era, Sid, isn't he, leaving?
He is, because, of course, he's part of that team that won... was it 5 in 8 years European Cups? Goes all the way back, of course, to the Decim era as well. No one in history has won more European Cups than him. Paco Gento is level with him on 6. I suspect this means that he won't win another European Cup unless he's about to join, City or United or something. Bayern Munich, maybe.
Man United. I don't know. Yeah.
Are they even in the Champions League? They are, aren't they? United
they are, but I wouldn't say that
they're not going to go. They're not going to win it. Yeah. No. And the goodbye felt a bit strange, I thought, because of course it's good that you can break away from the here and now, because this has not been a nice season for Dani Carvajal.
No,
it's not been a nice season from Dani Carvajal either.
No.
I think in the breakdown in dressing room relationships, I think actually he carries a certain degree of responsibility for that. But I do like the fact that in a moment like this, people can look beyond that, because what he's done for Real Madrid and the quality of player he's been is enormous. I genuinely think he was a candidate for the Ballon d'Or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Where did he finish? 5th in the end, was it, or 6th? Can't remember.
Finished pretty high up. Yeah.
Yeah, and he'd been fantastic all season. Of course, he scores in the Champions League final. He was very much the kind of, if you like, there was. I always felt that with that Spanish national team, there were 3 kind of captain roles to be played, and one was the captain from a kind of a technical point of view was Rodri, and listen to him talk, and listen to the leadership and the role. The captain from a kind of humane point of view and group dynamics and so on was Alvaro Morata, and you talk to people at the federation and they absolutely loved Morata. And the captain from a kind of competitive hard bastard sort of way was Dani Carvajal. I think he was really, really important for that team, and he won't be going to the World Cup, and I'm not sure who will take on that kind of role.
Hold on, do we know that for sure?
Yes, I think we do.
We do.
I think he wasn't in the 55, was he?
Was he not in the 55?
I think he wasn't in the 55 pre-list. Yeah.
Yes. Fair enough. Well, and David Alaba's leaving as well.
Yeah, well, that was nice in terms of the celebration, because of course this cult thing of lifting up the chair, and it always feels with David Alaba that it was the knee problem in the end that did it. And we've said this, and it's a horrible thing to say, but unfortunately, you report back what's true and what you're told, and that is that really and truly for the last year and a half, he just physically isn't in condition to be a top level professional footballer anymore.
All right, so those were the goodbyes for Real Madrid. Is there going to be a hello, Sid? Is there going to be a welcome? Is there going to be a new face? Because for the first time in 20 years, we have elections for the presidency of Real Madrid. Enrique Riquelme against Florentino Perez.
I don't think Enrique Riquelme will win.
Do you think that he even thinks that he's going to win? Or
no,
is this him sort of announcing himself to everyone?
And I don't think it matters. I think a couple of things have happened. I mean, the fundamental thing, of course, is that there weren't due to be elections now. No. And what Florentino did fundamentally, and we talked about this when he delivered that extraordinary speech, was to try and flush out his enemies, and in particular to flush out Enrique Riquelme, who no one had heard of, or almost no one had heard of, unless you're very into electric companies. No one had heard of him. And Florentino basically did this kind of, it was almost a trailer for him, this man, without naming this man with the South American accent, the Mexican accent, as it turned out, who's going around talking to electric companies. Well, it's him. And there's also behind that the paranoia or the suspicion from Florentino that the owner of Iberdrola, the big electric company in Spain, which is not Enrique Riquelme, but I've forgotten his name now, but it's kind of Florentino's big arch enemy. I quite like the idea of sort of comic book bad guy arch enemies. These are really bad, evil people with huge empires kind of taking each other on. It's got a nice origin story, I think, somewhere. Anyway, so what Florentino did was flush this out and make these elections happen. And I think what happened there was that Riquelme was in a position where he kind of had to run with it. Because he'd been kind of invited. So he'd been given an opportunity, but I think also an obligation. And I think it's an obligation because effectively, shall we use this? Let's do this from a playground kind of language, shall we? Okay. Florentino's effectively said, let's see if you've got the balls for this. Come on then. Come on and have a go if you think you're hard enough. And if he doesn't go, there'll be a you're a chicken thing. Yeah. And I think there will be that, and there'll be a sense that Florentino has won. Now, obviously, there is a risk in Florentino's case, and Florentino didn't need to do this, but he wanted to flush Riquelme out before he was ready and before he was able to put everything in place. Riquelme basically has had to move fast to get everything in place. You notice that everything he said really hasn't revealed anything yet. I think partly because there isn't very much to reveal.
I mean, what is there to reveal? Yes.
Well, he's named his board of directors yesterday, but obviously once we get into the electoral campaign, he will have to talk about a sporting project, who his sporting director is, who his manager will be, what players he's interested in signing, and so on. Now, there's a bit of me that thinks if he thinks he can't win, he could pretty much say anything. Because he'll never have to say, oh, yeah, I've got Pele and Maradona coming along, you know? I mean, they probably wouldn't be a great partnership up front, to be fair. It'd be Vinicius and Mbappe, you know, how do you fit them together and stuff? But so I think we've got an election.
But I mean, there are signings that he can say, you know.
There are signings that he can say. Yeah, I mean, the obvious one would be a Haaland or whatever.
I'm going to bring Haaland and Rodri and, you know.
Yes, exactly.
Guys, you know.
Now, I think he had to stand. I think it doesn't matter if he loses. I've heard quite a lot of people say, oh, but he's going to look stupid because he's going to lose. I don't think he's going to look stupid at all. I think everyone knows the reality of it. I think this is an opportunity to have a week or 10 days talking a lot about Real Madrid, maybe attack Florentino on a handful of things, maybe make a point, which no one has done, and I think he will, about Florentino's plans to change the model of the club. Because I think if there hadn't been elections, that would have just kind of happened. And now at least I think there's going to be a conversation about it and some opposition to it. And I think if he loses, it doesn't matter so long as there are elections in the future. And I think that's partly what he's saying, is that this might be the last time, because if this does become a fan-owned club and it does become a club that's done through shares, it will work differently.
Yes. All right. Watch this space with those elections, which will kick off the campaigning. I mean, you know, Florentino's very much kicked off his campaign. And,
by copying Joan Laporta, which I thought was amazing. Yeah. He even used the same building, giant billboard, list of the places where he's won the European Cups. There's history still to be written, but it's a giant billboard of Florentino on the same building.
Yes,
that Joan Laporta used to announce his presidency at Barcelona, or his presidency campaign for Barcelona. What was it, 2 years ago? 3 now? I'm not sure how long it is.
Than that. Yeah. Congratulations to Barca Femini, who have won the UEFA Women's Champions League for a fourth time.
They are just phenomenal.
They beat Lyon 4-0 in Oslo.
So much better than everybody else, and it's not just in Spain. In Spain, obviously, it's more marked, but just phenomenal. The threat there, obviously, will be the continued investment in the Super League in England.
But yes, congratulations to them for another well-deserved triumph. And congratulations to Depor, who are back in the Primera División. They won 2-0 at Valladolid to go 6 points clear of Almeria with 1 game left. Just wild scenes at Valladolid's José Zorrilla Stadium. There were 5,000 Depor fans there. They wanted a lot more tickets, but they got 5,000, and it was absolutely ridiculous to see how they celebrated. And well, they might, you know, I was going to say a giant of Spanish football, a very big team in Spanish football in the 21st century.
Yeah, one of only, is it 9 teams to have ever won the league? So yeah, I suppose you could say they are historic. I don't know about you. This feels to me like one of those moments where the entire country's happy that they're back, apart from maybe Celta fans. And even they're happy. Did you notice that Iago Aspas,
now
he didn't actually say, I want Depor back. But in the course of because he's staying, Iago Aspas.
Yeah.
Barry Aspas, sorry, why did I call him Iago? In the course of his little speech, he said, looking forward to next year, another year in Europe, and maybe a derby. And I think that's him implicitly saying it's great that Depor are back. Now, obviously, we now want to go and absolutely batter the shit out of them, but it's great that they're back.
Yes, yeah. And they are back. So fantastic to have Depor in the Primera División. The teams in the playoff spots right now, because Racing and Depor have gone up automatically, are Almeria, Malaga, Las Palmas, and Castellón. But Burgos and Eibar are still in with a chance in the final round of fixtures. Zaragoza relegated, Sid. Zaragoza relegated.
Yeah, it's enormous. The route back from the third tier is not quite as bad as it used to be when it was the Segunda B, but it's still structured across two divisions, the Primera Ref. It's still hard to find your way back, but there is an automatic promotion back. But the thing is that, you would make the assumption that Zaragoza go down, they're a big club, they'll come back. They may well not. They're a club that actually, largely some of their financial difficulties have been not entirely fixed, but are being resolved and being sorted out. But it's just extraordinary to see them down there. They're not just down; they're bottom. It's amazing. This is a team that won the Cup Winners' Cup. What was it? I mean, I suppose 1994 isn't that recent now. It feels very recent to me.
Yeah. Well, no. It's not that recent, but still.
No, it's not. And won the Copa del Rey in 2004. Traditionally a European team, traditionally a good first division club. It's extraordinary, and a big city, of course.
Yeah, huge city, huge fan base, and they will be in the third tier next season. Speaking of the third tier, there was a really, really bizarre situation in Primera Ref. Pontevedra thought they'd made the playoffs, and Real Madrid Castilla thought they hadn't, but they were both wrong. They'd misinterpreted the rules in the event of a three-way tie for points between them and Baracaldo. So it's Castilla who go into the playoffs and not Pontevedra. This was wild, Sid.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's add something to it. You just said that Pontevedra thought they were in the playoffs. Castilla thought they weren't in the playoffs. Yeah, so did the
they'd been told by the federation.
The Primera Ref itself had announced that Pontevedra were in the playoffs. 2 hours later, they go, well, actually, maybe not. There are two different versions of the rules on this, because there's a kind of an overarching rules of competition, and then there's a set of specific rules, and they contradict each other. And essentially, this is about a three-way tie, about how the head-to-head is calculated. And there was a difference between what one set of rules said and the other said. So having been told they were in the playoffs, Pontevedra were then told they are not.
Yes. So it's Real Madrid Castilla.
Good work, everyone. I mean, well played. Fantastically organised as ever. I mean, seriously?
Yes. Well, that feels like a fitting place to leave the podcast for another season on massive administrational cock-up. There we go. Let's leave it there, shall we? Thanks for listening over the course of the season. Thanks for the support over at Patreon. Thanks for watching on YouTube, listening wherever you listen to your podcast. We massively appreciate it. This has been our 13th year doing the podcast, I think. And it's been as enjoyable as the first. So thanks for being on the journey with us. And we'll do it all again next season. In the meantime, patreon.com/TSFP for all your Spanish footballing needs throughout the summer. We'll be there. Hope you can join us too. Adios, amigos.
Cheerio.